Yo, what is up, guys? It's Cohen back here again today with another recap of the NBA games from today. I'm going to get right into it because there's a lot I want to talk about, so I'm going to waste no time. First and foremost, I want one of you right now to go down into the comments and explain to me what the hell is going on with the New Orleans Pelicans because I do not understand them. I've watched them play, I've looked at their roster, I've looked at statistics, I've done everything, and the Pelicans don't make sense. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the Pelicans just blew out the Los Angeles Clippers, a contender in a lot of people's eyes, in my eyes, by 20 points. And it wasn't that close. It was way, way beyond 20 points. The Clippers just did not have an answer tonight. They just couldn't stop anything. Zion was killing them. Ingram was killing them. Lonzo was draining threes on them. The Clippers could not stop the Pelicans tonight. The same Pelicans team that early this month beat the Utah Jazz, right? Record-wise, they have been the best team in the entire NBA up to this point. The same Pelicans team that a couple days ago, 4 days ago, I believe, lost by 30 to the league worst Minnesota Timberwolves, who we'll actually talk about, got a pretty big win. We'll talk about them in a little bit. And then beat the last two games, they beat the Cleveland Cavaliers, who aren't a very good team, but they beat them by over 30 points, and then they beat the Clippers by 20 points tonight. I don't get it. They're super inconsistent, and I'm trying to understand why. I'm watching them play. I'm trying to figure it out. It's just some nights they have it, some nights they don't. And I don't know if that comes down to Stan Van Gundy. I don't know if that comes down to just the players being wildly inconsistent. But I think what this game shows is the Pelicans' potential. The Pelicans have such insane potential, and they just fail to meet it a lot of the time. Now, I don't think their roster construction is very good. I've said this before, but they do have so much talent. Lonzo has really stepped up. This is probably the best he's ever been. Zion's been was an all-star this season. Brandon Ingram's really good. Steven Adams is a solid player. Eric Bledsoe has some moments. JJ Redick, if he's not being washed, then he's playing pretty well. You have a lot of talent on this roster. You have Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's an interesting guy. You have Kira Lewis Jr. There's interesting pieces. There's super talented guys on this Pelicans roster. They just have not been able to put it together. And tonight they put it together. Last game they put it together. Earlier in the month of March, I believe it was the first day of March, they beat the Jazz and they put it together. If this Pelicans team can put it together, they're scary. And I think that's what a lot of people expected them to be this season, is this. Not necessarily beating the Clippers by 20, but a really competitive team that could come out and whoop you on any given night. And they just haven't been it. And if they can show this, then this solves so many of their problems, if they can just be consistent. And I think that this Pelicans potential poses a ton of interesting questions about their future. It doesn't say a lot about them now because we see them go up and down, up and down, up and down. Now, maybe these two back-to-back blowouts are an indicator of what's to come this season. They're an indicator of the fact that the Pelicans are going to be a good team for the rest of the season. But I think it's a lot more interesting to think about what their future looks like. Because if this Pelicans team shows this potential, what does the front office think about this? And mainly, I think that comes down to Lonzo Ball, who's a guy who's been in a lot of trade rumors, and with the trade deadline now only 10 days away, you have to figure out either you're going to trade him or you better commit to bringing him back, even if a team offers him a ton of money, because you do not want to have a player like him walk for nothing. So they have a big decision to make, and wins like this are really going to shape how this Pelicans team handles the trade deadline. If they go into the trade deadline with like a couple blowout wins here and there, maybe some losses, but a lot of wins, I would not be surprised if they say, okay, we're keeping this together. This is our long-term core for the future, and Lonzo ends up staying. Like long-term, they go, okay, here's your $15 million, $20 million a year contract. Stay a Pelican for as long as you want. Or they go into the trade deadline with a bunch of losses. They go back to the opposite side of the coin. I actually tweeted out a couple of days ago that the Pelicans they flip a coin every night to decide whether they play like a top 5 team or a bottom 5 team every single night, and tonight was one of those top 5 team nights. But imagine that they go into the trade deadline losing. Now that might not necessarily flip it, but it does make you think, is Lonzo the long-term answer? And if a team throws you a pretty good offer for Lonzo Ball, say like a Chicago Bulls, which is a team that's been talked about a lot with Lonzo Ball, do you make that trade? If this team doesn't look like it's going to make a run this season, if it looks like, man, we're falling out of it, because this is big. The Mavericks are improving. The Warriors are up. They're up and down. They were up tonight. We'll talk about them also. They're up and down every now and again, but teams are steadily improving in the Western Conference. So you have to make a decision. Do you want to make that playoff push and maybe try and win a play-in game, or do you want to try and fall back down and add another young piece to this team? That's the decision to be made for this Pelicans team, and the way they play before the deadline may very well shape that. Because right now, if I had to make that decision as the Pelicans GM, I'm undecided. I like Lonzo, and I think Lonzo can be a really good player for this team, so I would potentially look to keep him long term. But if a team comes out and offers Lonzo Ball $20 million a year, am I willing to pay that much money for Lonzo Ball? That's the question you have to ask. I'm sure people have differing opinions. Let me know what you think about that in the comments below. We're going to move to the Clippers side of the ball. This was bad. Kawhi Leonard complained about the loss tonight, saying that consistency is a problem. If you're not consistent, you're not going to win anything. And he's true, because you do need to be consistent against those top of the Western Conference teams to get out of the West. That was why they lost to the Nuggets. It's because they had a super high for the first 4 games of the series and a super low for the last 3, where they ended up blowing the 3-1 lead and ultimately falling way short of their goal of winning a championship. And as a Thunder fan, I've seen teams that have problems with consistency. I've seen them multiple times, not necessarily last season or this season, but in terms of like a lot of those Westbrook and KD teams that just didn't end up working out, consistency was a problem. There were some nights where it's like, how are we this talented and losing this game? It happened with the 3-1 lead with the Warriors where we blew that one. I've seen it firsthand. And this Clippers team, I do think they are much better than they were last season, but consistency is still a problem. Expect them to make moves. I think that this loss in particular is going to end up causing moves to be made for the Clippers, because there were reports like a week ago or so that the Clippers were happy with their core. They were like, we could go into the playoffs with this. We're good. And now a 20-point loss to the Pelicans, a team that has not been good this season, given they do have a lot of talent, but they haven't been good record-wise, is scary. And when your best player, a player that could leave your team this season in free agency or in this offseason, you want to listen to him. And I think after tonight, you have to make moves. So I think that this loss does end up causing the Clippers to make some more moves than they might have made otherwise. So keep an eye on that. Now I want to talk about the Timberwolves, a team that's been really bad this season, but have improved since hiring Chris Finch as their head coach. Firing Saunders, bringing in Chris Finch maybe has made a difference, because they've been playing better basketball. And particularly, I want to give a shout out to Anthony Edwards, who I think is one of the least talked about #1 overall picks in my lifetime. No one is talking about Anthony Edwards. The only time they've talked about him is that dunk earlier in the season. Other than that, no one talks about Anthony Edwards. And that might be because he's on the Timberwolves, but Cat got a ton of coverage over there in Minnesota when he was the #1 overall pick. So I don't know what it is. Maybe it just is the emergence of LaMelo Ball being a really good rookie. A lot of people think he should have gone #1 overall. I'm in the boat that I would have picked LaMelo #1 overall. But it's super cool to see Anthony Edwards have a game like he did tonight. In case you don't know, they beat the Trailblazers 114-112. Anthony Edwards putting up a 30-point game, trading buckets with Damian Lillard down the stretch, hitting some tough step-back threes. He's been super inefficient this season, and tonight he was very efficient, and he was a killer. And if he can play like this, this raises the Timberwolves ceiling a ton. And if the Timberwolves get a pretty good pick, imagine if the Timberwolves get the #1 pick this season. And if this Anthony Edwards keeps showing up and they go into next season in the future with a core of like a Cade Cunningham, Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Townsend, whoever else you want to add to that core, it doesn't matter. Malik Beasley, if you want to, if he stays consistent, that team has a ton of potential. And so Anthony Edwards needs to show right now, hey, I can be one of these guys. And I think he does have that potential. Obviously, he was a #1 overall pick for a reason. He's not some like scrub coming off the bench, but there have been a lot of people calling for people's heads like Timberwolves, oh my God, how'd you not draft LaMelo Ball? How'd you mess this up? Anthony Edwards still has a ton of time. I've seen the same stuff with Wiseman, who we'll talk about in a second, where people are already calling them busts this early in their career. Chill out. Just chill the hell out. There's so much time left. He looked like the Timberwolves made the right decision tonight, picking him #1 overall. He showed that flash that he has shown. He's shown it at Georgia. He's shown potential. It's just, can he get that consistency? Like we were just talking about the Pelicans. The theme of this video seems to just be consistency, and we'll see if he can find it. For the Blazers, this is just a tough loss. I don't think that this says a lot because Anthony Edwards did have a career game against you. Yeah. Now I'll just give a quick word about the Celtics-Rockets game. Celtics, they're improving. The Rockets are awful. They're terrible. They're really bad at basketball. Christian Wood, please come back. I need that Rockets first-round pick. Please. They've lost 16 in a row. Christian Wood, please come back. I could talk about the Grizzlies-Thunder game, but I don't want to talk about it too much because I made a whole video on it earlier, so I really won't get into it. Just know that SGA and Poku had incredible games, and if you want to hear more about that game, go check out my video from earlier. Jazz-Warriors, this is a game I really want to go into depth on. If this was a 1-8 matchup, this would be super interesting, is really what I came from this game. The Jazz are good. They're really, really good. Rudy Gobert had an amazing night tonight. But the Warriors just give them problems. They just don't have anyone to stop Steph. Wiggins had a great game tonight. Jordan Poole has been he's been a breath of fresh air for a Warriors team that was struggling so hard to find guys that were reliable. Jordan Poole's been really good since he's kind of entered that rotation. He's taken Brad Wanamaker's spot. Rest in peace, Brad Wanamaker. At least in terms of his rotation, he didn't die or anything, but his playing time is dead. And it looks like it was a great decision. Steve Kerr, who's gotten a lot of flack this season for being an overrated coach, for making bad decisions, made a good decision. And putting Jordan Poole in there has done a lot for this team. A guy that a lot of people called one of the worst players in the league last season. He's been playing really well. I'm really happy for Jordan Poole. He's a cool player. And the Warriors just seem to have the Jazz's number sometimes. And like I said, if this is a 1-8 matchup, man, I'm going to be interested. I will be very tuned in because the Warriors just exposed the Jazz's defense tonight from the perimeter. They just exposed them in every way that they were able to. Wiseman had a really solid game. Gobert, for his credit, had an incredible game. He had a 20-20 game, nearly a 25-30 game. I believe he had 24 and 28. He was just dominant tonight, as seemed to be tradition against the Warriors centers. James Wiseman's still learning, but he had a good game. This is why you don't call guys busts like 2 days into their NBA season. You got to give them time. But yeah, the big takeaway. Jazz, if I'm the Jazz, I don't want to see Steph Curry round one. I don't want to see this Warriors team round one, just because they're volatile. They can either be really bad or really good on any given night, like a lot of teams we've talked about in this video. And if you face them on those really good nights, you are in trouble, especially if Curry is putting up like 50 on your head. That's a problem. Spurs Sixers. I don't know why some people aren't buying into the 76ers yet. I'm fully bought in. I think the Sixers could win the East if they play. They would have to play really well against the Nets, which is what you have to do against a team with 3 All-Stars and like 2 or 3 MVP candidates as well. You've got to play really, really well. But if they did, I think they could win. I think this is the best Sixers team we've seen since the Jimmy Butler Sixers team. And even that one, maybe even better, because this team has the best version we've ever seen of Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, and Tobias Harris. They're 3 best players. Matisse Thybulle's been stepping up. They have a really solid bench now. They've got good players like Danny Green, who's a great role player for any championship team. We've seen that the past 2 seasons where he's been on the championship winning team. He's just a good player. Dwight Howard, they finally have a reliable backup big, which they've never really had. Also, Tony Bradley he really impressed the other night. Tonight against the Spurs, just everyone was firing on all cylinders. And I think what this game really showed is that this Sixers team is a lot more than just Joel Embiid. It's not Joel Embiid carrying these guys. This team has a ton of potential. Daryl Morey did an incredible job building this team up, and really putting players in there are going to emphasize the 3-star strengths. I think it also comes down to coaching. Doc Rivers has been so good for the Sixers team. I don't know what it is with Doc Rivers and Tobias Harris. They just got some weird connection going on there, because every time Tobias Harris plays with Doc Rivers, he's just so much better. I don't know what it is, but Doc Rivers just seems to kind of know how to use him, and that's cool, I guess. He's kind of like the Tobias Harris whisperer, if you want to call it that. But Tobias Harris, Ben Simmons, they both balled out tonight. Ben Simmons got called overrated by the Wizards announcer the other night. I don't think that's true. I think, if anything, he's underrated, if you want to talk about it that way. The Sixers team is just being slept on, I still think. And people are sleeping on them for the wrong reasons. It's not even stuff about this season. People are sleeping on the Sixers because they've choked in the playoffs in the past, as if this team is anything relatively similar, other than the fact that they have Embiid, Simmons, and Tobias Harris, who are all the best versions of themselves that we've ever seen right now. So I don't think that's a valid reason to not believe in them. You could talk about other stuff, but that is not a valid reason to not believe in them, to at least be a threat to win the East or just be really, really good. Heat Magic. Really, what just this comes down to is get Vucevic help or trade Vucevic. You could get 2, probably not 3. Yeah, I'll go 2. You get 2 first for Vucevic and maybe some other assets. He's so good. Terrence Ross also had an incredible game. I can't say that it was all Vucevic, but between the 2 of them, they scored almost every point. The Magic scored 97, and Vucevic and Ross both scored around 35 points. So if you do the math, that leaves 27 other points to be scored by every other player that played tonight. Yeah, not good. Heat side of things, Jimmy Butler is really, really good. He's showing that the Heat were not, or at least his play in the bubble was not a fluke. This is the best version we've ever seen of Jimmy Butler. He's playing at his playoff level, and I think he's starting to enter that MVP conversation. I personally don't know if I'd have him top 5, probably not, but he's definitely in that top 10 somewhere. He's really, really good. Another team we could talk about that's on fire right now is the Atlanta Hawks. They haven't lost. I believe it's a 5-game win streak now. Yeah, it is a 5-game win streak since they brought in Nate McMillan to replace Lloyd Pierce. Coaching matters. I might make a video on that. Yeah, I'm going to make a video on that. I'm going to write that one down. But coaching matters in this league, and Nate McMillan has this team playing really well. They're not even fully healthy yet. Cam Reddish hasn't played here and there. DeAndre Hunter's still not back, who I think is a super valuable piece of that team. And they still have not seen Chris Dunn play. So this Hawks team has a lot of potential, just like that Pelicans team we were talking about. It's just finding that consistency, and a 5-game win streak certainly speaks to finding consistency. I believe that's every game other than Raptors Bulls. I don't have a lot to say about this game, but the Bulls made some interesting moves with their lineup, and they worked. Wendell Carter on the bench. Kobe White on the bench. Thad Young, Tomas Satoransky into that starting lineup. They blew the Raptors out of the water. 23-point win. Norman Powell had like 30. Norman Powell's been unreal since I called him bad in my video earlier in the season where I talked about how the Raptors could consider blowing it up if they want to look towards the long term. I said that Norman Powell was playing really bad this season, and to my credit, at that point he was playing really bad, and now he looks like God's gift to basketball. So that is just my luck. I'm sure someone at some point will go back and clip that. We'll see. But the Bulls made some good moves. Billy Donovan, I think, is a good coach, and I think he made some smart decisions, kind of changing things up in the starting lineup. It just seemed to flow better. I think Kobe White eventually can be that starting point guard for them, but you have to make these changes, and players seem to buy in. Zach LaVine played bad tonight, which is very rare to say, and they blew the Raptors out by 23 points. It wasn't even close the whole game. And Zach LaVine played bad. If this Bulls team wants to make the playoffs and try and make some noise, you have to learn how to be able to win when your best player is off. The best teams can still win when their best player is off. You could talk about like a Lakers where LeBron or AD can have a bad game and they can still win because the other one steps up. You could talk about the 76ers where if Joel Embiid or Ben Simmons have a bad game, Tobias Harris can step in. And if you need someone like Embiid or Simmons to also step in for the other guy, that's also possible. You could talk about the Nets where Kyrie, KD, Harden, any one of them could be like kind of mediocre on any given night. As when I say mediocre, I mean just not an MVP type player, because those guys are never bad players. But one of them could have an off shooting night, turning the ball over a little too much, and the other two all-star MVP type players could just go out and take over for them. I'm not saying the Bulls are on the level of those teams, but those are things that those teams do. The Bulls need to be able to do that, and they did that tonight, which is big for them. So shout out to the Bulls. I really like their young core. I want to see them succeed. Shout out to Patrick Williams too. He was a guy a lot of people hated on the pick. I'm not going to lie. I thought Denny Avdija was the pick, and Patrick Williams has been really, really good. He deserves a lot of credit for that. So with that being said, that's all the games from today. Let me know what you thought of the games. Let me know what your takeaways were. Let me know what you think is going to happen. The trade deadline, 10 days away now. I'm definitely going to make some videos prepping for that. So let me know. Hit me up on Twitter with trade ideas at @3_Cohn on Twitter. And I will see you guys later. Everyone, say it back.